All right. Thank you for coming out here on our inaugural session at the Sharjah Film Platform. And I'm in very good company out here. We've got Nathalie, we've got an academic, and we've got an artist as well. So hopefully we round up the whole thing very well in the whole emerging XR. Well, you know, there's VR, there's AR, there's XR, and I guess everyone will come to know a lot more about it as my esteemed panelists, you know, shed light on the topic. To start off with, I'd like to invite Nathalie to introduce herself more, and after that's done, we'll get into the discussion. And at any time, feel free to interrupt us with questions, with relevant questions, with heckling if you so choose to. But hopefully there'll be intelligent questions coming in, and we'll keep it lively. Nathalie, I'll hand it over to you now.
Hello? Okay. Is this good enough? The clicker is working, right? All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for attending this session. What I would like to start with is a little bit of a brief introduction about Blink, but more importantly, hopefully more of an education on what XR, which is extended realities, is all about. One of the things that I would like to just clear up in terms of confusion, XR encompasses augmented reality, AR, virtual reality, VR, and mixed reality, MR. So, and as time moves forward, I think everyone who sits in this room and beyond it will start understanding more and more how this technology is going to impact our lives. So without any further ado, Blink Studios started 14 years ago, proudly in the United Arab Emirates, and grew from Dubai headquarters to an Abu Dhabi branch, and now recently in California. We're probably one of the first studios to actually do the opposite direction, come up from the United Arab Emirates and travel into the US. Let's start with a general question. What is the future bringing? And probably that's the question that everybody has on their minds when they come and think of this new immersive technology that's taking over and that a lot of people are thinking about. The shape of the world, as we understand it, is changing. I don't need to explain how. I think if each one of you was to think of all the various industries, various sort of things that are happening in our lives, we all know one thing. There is change happening, and we are trying to adapt to it. The other part is that that change is happening very, very quickly. We're seeing the world very differently than how we used to see it maybe almost 10, 20 years ago. And we're going to see it even much more differently as we move forward and literally see it differently, not just see it hypothetically. Monitors, there is questions about whether monitors, as we understand them, are going to remain part of our lifestyle when we engage with content, communication in general. Right now, we all do this, I'm sure. Before we used to do that. But now we're probably going to start doing a lot more of this, which is space. We're going to start using our space. Our space is going to become our screen. And I always keep saying that, get out of my space, which is a metaphorical sentence to mean, please stay out of my space, is actually going to become quite literal in terms of how we're going to engage with content. We're going to experience things through glasses very soon. These glasses are becoming more and more mainstream. They're changing from big, huge headsets, and they're evolving into spectacles or just potentially just simple frames. We've seen ourselves as a studio, we've seen a lot of innovation in that in the US, and I think my colleagues are going to give you a little bit more about that kind of evolution. The world of entertainment is going to happen through our eyes. If you've seen the movies like Black Mirror, the TV series, you'd recognize that particular frame where he's seeing his world through his lenses. And there's a lot of future resources that are being spent. Now, you wonder, is this just hypothetical? Actually, it isn't. There's a lot, I would say billions of dollars being invested by companies around the world into this technology. And if there was no belief that it will become part of our lives, then there wouldn't be actually so much investment that is being made. In general, technology is experiencing a growth in the next 3 years of $17 trillion. But that's not, of course, only XR. XR plays a part of it. I'm sure you've heard of blockchain. I'm sure you've heard of IoT. But technology in general has taken on its own massive revolution. These are some of the companies that have been pouring in a lot of investment, especially behind the XR world. And there's a lot of innovation that is happening within their realm that we are learning of day by day. The content reality. There's a couple of questions that you need to ask yourselves when you think about XR. And the reason why it's questions and not answers is because it's an education for everyone who is involved in it. There are no answers yet about this particular category. Is it likely that people will have more computing devices in the future? The answer is yes. They're only growing in terms of number of phones, watches, glasses that we're going to be acquiring. Are these computing devices and networking speeds going to be faster in the future? I'm sure everybody's heard of 5G making an entrance into our lives very soon, which will speed up the way we communicate with content. Are there any large-scale initiatives seeding the growth of mixed reality or virtual reality and all of the likes? Yes, there is. Is there a consumer appetite for mixed or augmented reality or any kind of other reality? The answer is again a yes. Will mixed reality be used outside of entertainment? The answer is again yes, and we're already seeing it in the medical sector and other types of sectors. Is storytelling going to change? Our experience has told us yes. Storytelling is going to become story doing. When we're going to tell stories or experience them, we're not going to just hear them. We're going to actually do them, and we're going to impact those stories. Imagination is going to become a very strong part of our lives. We need to start using more our imagination to be able to envision what we're going to be experiencing. Our credibility as Blink Studio has already been proven. In 2018, we were adventurous and risky enough to create the world's first holographic cartoon. We worked towards children and family entertainment, and we decided to create a holographic cartoon where kids actually can watch a cartoon from in the space that they actually exist in. And we won the Augmented World Expo Award in that category in Silicon Valley in 2018. There's a video that just explains that. If there is any potential of us playing it, or should I just click and it will just play? Sorry, just okay. So basically, Kareem and Noor is a show that we created, but I guess I'll speak about that here.
Kareem and Noor is a show that targets kids between the ages of 3 to 6. It is a show that is embedded in social emotional learning. We first developed and produced it in 2016, where it aired on its unique YouTube channel in the format of 2-minute series. However, in 2017, we decided to convert the entire show format into a mixed reality storytelling experience. There are not a lot of shows out there targeting children with holographic images and visual experiences. We think that the challenges that we have surpassed in producing Kareem and Noor as a mixed reality show has taken us leaps into understanding how storytelling should be achieved in that medium. We very much firmly believe that the future will bring more of Kareem and Noor shows to kids everywhere.
So in terms of our own innovation and development in creating something that really penetrates the world of immersive storytelling, we feel that we have taken leaps in that ourselves. To that point, I would like to end my session and give it over to my colleagues who will speak of their own achievements, and hopefully we'll be able to open your minds to what the possibilities are going to look like into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nathalie.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for everyone for having me here at the Sharjah Art Foundation, Sheikh Ahor, everyone. My name is Patrick Lichty. I'm a researcher in augmented virtual immersive media at Zayed University, where I'm the director of the immersive research cluster at the Abu Dhabi campus. And I want to share a few things of my own experience and a few things that we're doing at Zayed. One thing that I'd like to remark upon is that I fell in love with this entire genre in 1989 when I started seeing a gentleman starting something called VPL, a company called VPL named Jaron Lanier, who I met in 1994. At that time, there were some online virtual worlds, including one called Super Escape that I went into and actually started doing some, and where I walked up in front, on a screen in front of a virtual piano, which I spent 2 or 3 months creating a series of sonatas, which are actually on my SoundCloud. And I would consider that my first, say, virtual world working up to VR space. And then through that time, kept going through a number of different interventions within VR, AR. Met a lot of the people at ATR Kyoto who were doing a lot of the work in the initial augmented reality space in the late 90s. And started doing work actually in the first AR group doing contemporary art called Manifest AR in New York in 2007. A few things that I want to talk about here is that, going from this, I believe that immersive media is something that is yet to be completely worked through in regards to the modern and contemporary world. And in this sense, I've been trying to work in this area with a number of different groups, including my one Second Life immersive world group called Second Front. We started in 2006 in response to some artists like Franco and Eva Matas, who were good friends of ours, who were starting to do starting to bring works by people like Marina Abramovich and Gilbert and George into Second Life and see what happened when these things were brought out of a context and brought into these immersive spaces. And our group, Second Front, through different traditions such as the Dada and the Dada futurists and the surrealist performance traditions, we wanted to see what could be done by not doing only a remediation, but trying to see what would be specific to virtual worlds. One of our first pieces I did with one of our group, Bibi Hansen, whose father is actually Al Hansen, the Fluxus artist. We worked on his piece called the Yoko Ono piano drop, but the thing is that we decided what is specific, and that would be to have 100 pianos fall on you in real time. Another one was a work with Salvatore Iaconesi, a TED Med fellow who crowdsourced his brain tumor. And this is his MRIs that we took out into Second Life and actually started reconstructing them as 3D prints. This is another piece called 7 Up, which refers to the Dadaist and futurist tradition, with a number of vignettes that were looking at the ideas of what is specific to the virtual art area. So, somewhat relevant to the Sharjah Art Foundation, we do a lot of work with the HoloLens. And this is actually an extension of the March Project work that was done here with Anudo Baidley. Basically looking at doing another work that was an extension of her work here and expanding it into the HoloLens because we were having trouble fabricating one and seeing what would an Emirati AR sculptural work be. And we deployed this at the Echo Media Art Festival in 2017. And Zayed University has been generous enough to give us a large amount of money to have our immersive media cluster and to work with Emirati women in doing VR and game design, architectural visualization, and we are soon going to be acquiring this immersive media portal from Sublime Systems, which we hope is going to really allow us to work in the area of immersive storytelling, virtual game design, and architectural visualization. And this is just a little bit of student work that I'm doing in my VR and game design class, dealing with things like cultural preservation from scans of the area. And then basically immersive experiences, basically drawn from the students' personal experiences. And of course, we're doing experiments with scanning, not only ourselves, but also historical objects, et cetera, for possible engagements with institutions around the Emirates at this time. And this last piece is a piece that I did for Monarch Al Saadiyat, a public space in Abu Dhabi. Was basically, I was asked to see what would a virtual space be like that basically referred to the Arabic and Islamic world, and also referred to Saint-Exupéry's Little Prince. And so this was my piece that went with that, and that was about 3 months over the summer during Ramadan. So anyway, this is some of the things that I've done and a few things that we're doing at Zayed University, and as I said, once again, I'm very happy to be here, and thanks so much to be part of this panel. Thanks so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Mamali Shafahi. I'm video artist and filmmaker. I did so many experience in immersive installation, physical and virtual. Usually I work in the long-term project research space, dealing with materials, content, and changing of the perception for the audience. And my main content of my work is how new technology is, the impact of the new technology is changing our body, our relation, and our societies. And usually through this installation, I work with different medium, like a sculpture, painting, video, and recently like 3D and virtual reality. I want to tell you a bit more about this installation, which called Virology, Fake News and Fake Science, was again around the impact of new technology, but I was also questioning the relationship between past, present, and future by making a labyrinth with different rooms. And one of the rooms was dedicated to the past with this gigantic sculpture, which is based on illustration of one of our Persian poem called Hafez, which is very like iconic image in Persian society. And then the other room was the remake of one of these Japanese science market. It was like this. I mean, I made a sculpture based on this sample, but the sample was the machine could imitate human voice for the robotic science in the future, how they can like make the similar voice for the human. And then I wanted to, with different color and different voice and different like odor and smell, I wanted to make like the difference, like what is the presentation of the future in that room, and in the other room was like more like Zen and more like a peaceful ambient. But the general idea was how we can basically relate it the moment, because I have a feeling like especially the new generation, I mean the young people are more obsessed about present and the future. And this show was based on how we can review the past also and make it kind of connected with the present and the future. is also one of another installation I made to just have an example of. This was like a set design for a performance. It made in the gallery in Tehran. My background is like I'm from Tehran and I moved in 2005 in France. I studied in art school of new media in Paris, Sharjah, and in 2014 I came back to Iran to make my first 3D film. It was a docu-fiction film, a long film, which I used my parents as the actor, and the story was how, like it was in 2 episodes. The first episode you could see them in their daily life, in the usual daily life of them, and very quiet of like 2 middle-aged person. And then the second episode, I used so many like 3D image and the content related to my artistic profile, and I use them such like a kind of creature, how they shift from like a simple life and like a ordinary life to something very like extraordinary and kind of strange, dreamy world. Through that film, I mean, I said 3D because you have to also watch it with glasses. I struggle a lot about how we can make a 3D image, because I didn't have any idea. I just had this idea of make a 3D film. Then I struggle a lot with my technician, both of us, just to find out how 3D image function, how about like the simplest thing, like right and left image, how like we can make it through the glasses. And it was whole discovery for me. And then in the same time I discovered VR. It was around 2015. And I was like, yeah, I want to make my next film in VR, because 3D was a bit small for me. I was very impressed first. I made it, but then I really like it could be in 2D. And then in 2017, I had a residency in Seoul, which I was more again to the, I discovered more VR, and I was also discover, I mean, it's happened in the time in Instagram, people started to, I mean, the story existed at that time in Instagram. I don't know if you're familiar with the story. It's a visual audio format of express yourself in 15 seconds about like any kind of thing. And I was really impressed by the way how people are using this new format in daily life, and they are making a really sophisticated audio-visual format, and like they express themselves. They do so many invention. Like as an artist, I was really surprised. Then I started to archive them, and I met Ali Islami. He's a VR artist and developer who was part of this panel, but unfortunately who couldn't come. And I went to Ali and I said, I have this archive, which is a very nice material to work, and I had the idea of making as usual, make a video art or film, make a collage of all these stories. But then while I started to do editing, I wasn't satisfied, because at the end was again the same 2D, like social media, and it didn't change for me. I wanted to really transfer this material to a new world. Then with Ali, we had this idea of create a virtual identity called Nerfang. Well, I can show you a very short introduction of our project.
In the current climate of the internet, we have reached an irreversible state in our social life and inherently the way we think and comprehend our reality. It's a situation we have all dived into, floating and yet struggling to find ourselves in it. To investigate this phenomenon and allow others to investigate it with us, we decided to create a virtual identity called Nerd Funk, a hybrid between a person and a collective, who exists on Instagram and follows contemporary digital culture. Based on the stories of people nerd_funk follows, we have created a series of virtual rooms investigating different issues.
Yeah, it's a very short introduction because, if you want to see whole, it's a video and it's a pitch deck at the Kaleidoscope website if you are interested to see more. What the idea is like create.
Mamali, I think what we'll do is we'll get back to this thing so we can start the session on there. And I'd love to. Is there more slides that you've got on there about the thing?
Yeah, I have another video.
I'd love to. Yeah, we'll get back to it. I think let's start up with the session so we can, get the audience as well engaged in this.
Sure.
So that's impressive, and that was a robotic voice, isn't there?
Sure.
The voice that you had on that, was that computer generated?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, what was the thinking behind that? Why would you actually put the computer generated voice in there?
Well, as I said, we really wanted to transfer this like documentation in something fiction, but in the virtual reality structure, which is Ali helped me to understand. Like virtual reality is about the structure, is about almost architectural world, but we made it with imagination, but it's not like 2D. It's completely different. That's why I prepare a video about, because one of the room is about post-body, and all the video we find through the Instagram related to how the identity of the user and the body and ergonomy is changing through the new technology. Then I have materials as for the first part of the video, and then the second part is a small part of prototype of the room around post-body, like I can show you. Sorry. This is one of the first prototype we made, and it was just an example for the user, for the audience. They are not very familiar with the VR, but it's just the question of perception, what we can create in VR, and of course everyone know well, I guess we can talk more about it.
Definitely. That was very interesting, and I think I'd love to get into, at some point during the panel, about what software you use probably. Are there any artists out here, or by show of hands, any artists out there? Great. And filmmakers? Wow, okay, so there's a lot of filmmakers out here. And what's surprising that I saw from the intro by my panelists is that this is cutting edge, coming out of, well, the Middle East. And, being in AR and VR and cinematic VR, let's say, filmmaking, a lot less is being done even in Hollywood. And from what I learned from watching the video by Nathalie, they actually won the Augies, the Augmented Reality Awards that was like just happened last year. So I'm letting that sink in for a moment. So from worldwide, contestants or pieces in there, something that was created out here in the UAE, a company based in the UAE actually won that award. So that's like taking AR and VR to a whole new level. So while most of us talk about filmmaking in the normal sense, well, we are pushing the boundaries apparently much more out there. And Nathalie, what actually makes you want to go where where normal filmmaking is still in this region, normal filmmaking is still a big deal, but you're pushing the envelope one step ahead. What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, actually, it's pretty simple. If you look at the history of film in general, where while people were filming silent movies, others were already exploring the idea of having sound become part of film experience. When we started watching black and white, people were looking into colored, and after that, everything we saw was colored film, so on and so forth. So what we think, and maybe it's just a hunch, probably an educated hunch, that there will be a sort of a transformation that we are going to experience in the next, I would say, 5 to 10 years, whereby our experience of stories as films is going to become very different than what we experience them now. And having said that, as a studio who's very focused on filmmaking and storytelling, we felt that if we don't start today to explore how to create stories within this medium that will engage the young and the old, then as filmmakers, we're gonna start going backwards, and we need to stay up with the times. So I think that forced sort of like a passion in us to actually pursue the understanding of this. It wasn't easy. We didn't think that we would be recognized on an international level at the Augie Awards, but we were very happy that we were, and I guess we kind of confirmed to ourselves that we are actually taking strides forward in terms of how we interpret film in that medium.
Oh, that's very impressive, Nathalie. Patrick, you, from what I gathered from your introductory presentation, you've been in this thing for ages, and you're now heading. Is your mic on?
Let's see her. Yes.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. And now you're here with the Zayed University, right? Is
Yes.
that it? And running a whole program to bring, I believe, what is it? A whole generation of filmmakers, or are they 3D artists, or what's inspiring you to do it out here, and how is it being?
Well, the thing is that what we're interested in is, I'd say we're interested in much more genre than medium. In other words, say we believe in the immersive media research cluster that immersion per se through 360-degree video, through interactive room scale VR, through augmentation. These are all things having to do with presence. These are all having to do with immediacy, presence, and the ability of the user to be surrounded, to be interactive, and also have a sense of agency in experiencing the work. So it depends. We have people from the communications school, we have people in psychology, we have people in the arts and design. So the thing is, we're very multidisciplinary. And the thing is that we are interested in the idea of immersive cinema. We're interested in the idea of immersive experience. We're also interested in the idea of instrumentalizing, immersive media to do things, to help in the medical industry and also in education as well. So the thing is that I think, while myself as a media artist, I've been interested in the idea of how to deal with the commentary on culture, and also the idea of how to work with immersion as medium and look at the specific ideas of what immersion is and how it deals with how our culture is in this point in time. To me, this has been very important, but also on the other hand is that dealing with the formal nature of immersion as being something that is immediate and interactive and giving more I'd say a more direct experience, because the thing is, I think in ways we can be really in love with the technology, but the matter is that, to me, I think that this isn't a technological conversation. It's a human conversation as how technology affects us culturally, our humanity, and how the way it allows us to communicate. You know, this is a story of communication. And I think this is what we're trying to, you know, deal with at Zayed University, and then also dealing with the, next generation of young women in the Emirates as media producers, and helping them be part of, you know, this larger community and helping drive that forward.
Interesting, very, very interesting. If so, I'm sure filmmakers out here probably definitely have a story in mind. And as you work towards producing that film, well, if I was someone like that with a film idea, and I wanted to take it, Mamali, this one's for you. If I wanted to take it beyond the beyond the screen, into something more immersive, let's say add more life to the story that I'm telling, how would one of me, I myself or one of the filmmakers out here come up to you and say that we'd like to collaborate in something like a living, you know, or like an extended version of our film? How would you approach that, an idea like that?
Hey. Yeah, for me, it was two main reasons about the interest of immersive media, and generally VR. The first reason, because I come from a country like Iran, and I moved from there at the age of like 22, and then at that time where internet exists, but we didn't have any kind of opportunity to deal with the like immersive media. Like in Iran, it was just some galleries, and then they were showing just painting or like a classical presentation of artwork, and then it was cinema. And then through the internet, I found out about like installation and performance and all this like immersive media. It was already run in the other countries. Then I had already this dream of like I want to experience it, and I want to create something more like as like at that time I had like idea of total art, which is like about lighting, about any kind of element can change, can create a new perception in my mind. And the second reason, of course, was when I was a student, by accident I had 2-3 professors. They were from the generation of first video artists, like people like Nam June Paik or Bill Viola, and all this first New York and Chicago artist generation, making so many experiences, like manual experiences around the medium of video with the first handycam cameras, and like and one of the professor I had, he was a Theoretian guy who made so many books about the reception of the brain, about the information, and all this scientific issue around, I mean, the relationship between art and science. And then I said all these things because now making VR as an artist for me is the same kind of exciting feeling of the first generation of dealing with something completely new and making really it's coming by organic, like we are creating. Cinema was there like more than 100 years ago, and of course we can. I'm against. I have nothing against cinema and 2D image. I think it's completely different subject, but now I have a joy of just being part of this experimental part of this.
Just to add to that, and just going back to the core question, is that when you think about filmmakers and they want to just say, let's say, I want the story to come out in an immersive way, it goes back to the core, actually. It goes back to the most important art that allows us to visualize anything that we think about, which is writing. You have to start thinking and writing your ideas in a different perspective, and that's a challenge for both the directors and the writers today, as well as the producers, that when we're thinking of an immersive story, we're thinking that the director is thinking, I've lost my camera. technically, because he's allowing a 360 sort of engagement from any person at any point. The writers are thinking that, okay, I've lost technically my pen. I can create so many different scenarios, but will it fit into creating this 360 immersive experience, and so on and so forth. So I think that the technology is amazing, honestly. And how many people have tried an immersive experience here, a truly immersive one? Okay, so when you put on the headset, or even when you go through your your phone, and you see things pop out in front of you, and you're interacting with it, it's almost like magic. It's not, I mean, think about it. We never thought that could be something more than what we'd seen in the movies. But now it's actually happening. And when you start thinking of that in the context of story and film, then it becomes a far more interesting challenge if you want to deliver something that engages both emotionally and visually. So I think it goes back to the core of the writing and how you actually can see a story from multi-angles.
Great. So yeah, speaking of, many of you have experienced it, and I'm sure there must have been a spark out there saying, I wish I could do it. Now, I'm assuming that you probably would not be too technically savvy all the way from start to finish. But someone like Patrick, who's already doing, a kind of a course out there for students, how would you get them interested in it, or what would they need to do to get that vision, like the behind the scenes?
In short, there's a lot of tools online. So, say for example, there's I'd say to get started with, say, game-based immersive VR. There's Unity 3D. There's Unreal Engine 4. Both of these are professional engines. They're both totally free.
When you say, when you say engines, what?
In other words, basically what they are, that they're development environments for creating, I'd say, video game environment-based immersive media. And then the thing is if you're looking at doing immersive cinema, basically at this point, if you're working with Adobe software, After Effects at this time has plugins that allow you to use video files from 360-degree cameras like the Samsung Gear 2, the Ricoh Theta, and they pop right in, and you can work with them right out of the box. So and then there's a lot of open source software as well that gives a lot of options. But I'm saying that you're saying that how can you get into this right now? And those are probably the best ways. In other words, working with immersive cinema and then working with room scale VR.
We'd probably start off with, if it's a VR production, then we'd start off with shooting with the VR camera. But before that, like Nathalie said, we'd probably have to start thinking, basically the camera is the audience now. There is no director's perspective. The audience is free to look around. So we'd have to keep that in mind for VR. If it's AR, then it's a whole different ball game where it's actually playing out. And Nathalie, y'all have produced something successfully commercially. So what would be the advice to people to actually, what's the secret of doing that? How do you commercialize the whole thing, and how do you get success that way?
First of all, the one thing that you have to start with is that you have to start with the fact that you don't know anything anymore. Because that's how we got this far, is we, our artists, our talents, ourselves as producers and directors, went to the hardcore of filmmaking and decided that we are ignorant of everything that we know, so that we start from the bottom up. Because at the end of the day, art is a beautiful form that invites a niche group of people who love it. But when it comes down to film technically needs to speak to everybody. It's a good story that everybody needs to engage with. So if this medium does not succeed in making filmmaking and storytelling accessible and enjoyable by everybody for different reasons, it will fail. However, the technology looks good. And that's where it goes back to the hardcore realities, that you need to understand that art so well and be able to start from scratch to rebuild it into that medium. Now, when it comes to commercialization, distribution platforms are now gaining leverage. I don't know if you recently saw, there's a the Black Mirror series on Netflix. And there's one episode that has come out where you can choose the next thing that you would like to watch. This is evidence of what's going to come next. You get to choose what's the next event you want to see so that you land on a different conclusion than another person watching that same episode and picking a different option. So just imagine what's going to happen next. So,
yes, so
it's a
Netflix
first
is
step.
actually pushing the limit.
Absolutely.
They've smoothly moved from the fact that everyone's watching movies on mobile phones anyways to get in that interactivity thing. It won't be long, I suppose, before they go full-fledged into AR, where probably the story is playing out in your living room, or VR indeed.
Absolutely.
But actually the thing is that haven't we done this interactive cinema thing before many years ago? In other words, this is about the second or third time with it. But the thing is, the thing that I think is really interesting about this is that we have a multiplicity of platforms. We have, we have the different ways of delivering, which I think that this could actually be can be much more successful than it has been in the past. In other words, we have the different channels of discussion through the different series, and then the thing is that we have I think that we have a different cultural moment, than we did in the past, and then also the different modes of delivery that we have through our various media channels. I think that there's a depth and there's a granularity that's much better these days, and I think that this is a way that it's going to actually have some traction.
The tech has actually finally caught up to the vision that storytellers have. Any one of you filmmakers out there who actually are experimenting with, like, let's say, a multi-branching narrative or someone like that? Well, if you're not, then this would be a great time to actually, look out for something along those lines, and then move into something like what probably Nathalie has done with AR, and maybe give extra life, like what Mamali is doing with branching spaces from the real to the virtual. So yeah, I think these are definitely exciting times. Is there any question that you'd like to aim at the panelists at this moment? Anyone? Any question for them? Okay, so we'll continue. There's a question there? Okay.
Hello? All right, this works. Thank you. By the way, thank you for this talk. This has been really inspiring, really thought-provoking. One thing I was wondering was, when I think about stories, and I think about the human utility of stories, I mean, obviously we've been telling stories for ages and ages now, right? And obviously it kind of boils down to, you could boil it down to certain things such as ethics, morals, history, things like that. What I'm wondering is because every story has to have a point, obviously. Every story has to have something that it's trying to say. Where do we maintain those type of things in a sort of an open-ended environment where the person experiencing that story has some agency or maybe a total sense of agency? The reason why I ask this is because with that Black Mirror episode, which was really impressive what they did as far as like all the different choices that it gave you, I started to notice that within its architecture, it still kind of forced the viewer a certain way. It's kind of ultimately bring them to the point, right? So I'm interested to hear from all three of you maybe, what are maybe some of the innovations that could sort of create that balance between that kind of the freedom of the person consuming the story versus the ultimate point of the story.
So I think what we're saying is that the audience has got agency, but how do you drive, probably as a director, in the end, as a storyteller, you need to control the narrative in some ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that cheating? Where do we draw the line?
It's tricks of the trade.
Yeah, this is a really good question because I'm thinking.
Go ahead, Patrick.
We want to tell a story, and we want to get a point across. I mean, so say for example, in my game design class, I do this one thing. I say, guess what? Here's the notion of choice, and I ask my students, pick any fruit: lemon, orange, watermelon. And I said, what if you want an apple? I haven't told you you can have an apple. And so that's, in this case, that's the crux of the whole thing. In other words, does the storyteller want to at least give you a number of options, give you a number of ideas, but the thing is in the end, there's some sort of resolution or some sort of series of experiences that we want to give you as artists, as storytellers, as cinematographers, and that sort of thing. And then, that's the balance, isn't it? And how we do that.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that point, it's like almost a virtual freedom, really. It's not real freedom of choice when it comes to the story. You're given choices, but we've already studied in the back end where these choices are going to go. So think about it this way. The writer is being hired to write 3 different stories and not one. It's pretty much it. But what you're experiencing is that a choice. No longer you are subjected to a one streamlined story, sort of story progression that lands you in one place. No, it gives you an option to think for yourself. But it still is giving you a limitation. But you don't feel it that way because this is a new way of experiencing film in general, or storytelling.
It's like this whole thing right now with AI, to go a little bit off tangent out here, but it's not really off tangent because when you're going into immersive medium of filmmaking, you can actually have AI driving one of the characters. So in AI, there really is no free will if you go to look at it, because everything is like within parameters. You can do certain things. But you can actually, for example, I've been working on a piece where the virtual character, the girl is there, and because you've got in VR, you're given agency, you can move up close to her. But if you keep being obnoxious, the AI, the machine learning that you can program into a game engine, can actually see how many times you've broached her space and can keep a record of that. And the next time you put the piece on and you walk close up to this character in there, she knows that you're just obnoxious, and she could probably be programmed to back off. Now, where do we go from there? The ethics, the morals, and stuff like that. This is all experimental territory, and I mean, everyone out here on this panel, one's an academic who's actually teaching. Nathalie has mastered the art of actually getting it out there to the public, and Mamali is like the creative person out there who's creating these new things. So, what's happening out here is I think there needs to be more dialogue. There needs to be more creativity out here from this region, coming up with stories that probably Hollywood doesn't have access to, the cultural, the morals, the ethics, and how can we expand minds, I guess, using this. But it was an interesting question, and yes, it does come down to ethics and to how much freedom we're giving our audiences out there. So yeah, it's definitely a good topic. There's another question.
Thank you all. I think we're all humble about what's going on. Obviously, there's many questions. Cinema's developed from the individual looking into a little thing, and then it became more collective in vaudeville and bars than silent. Like you said, Nathalie, I think that's true, and we have to be open. But let's try to play devil's advocate a little bit. Sometimes a lot of our experiences in VR and these new festivals is that it's very individual. And it kills that sacred room effect that you have in cinema, let's say. Kills perhaps collectivity that a lot of people are yearning for. There's been pros and cons in the debates that it also adds to the attention deficit that we already have. The ability for one of those slow films like a Bellatar or different types of filmmakers that we have participating in the film platform, harder to get access when people in those genres, let's say. So I want to bring out that devil's advocate thing. What will it do? Will it add to? I guess the response is it might create new collectivities, obviously. But how? That's more my question. Not so. I'm bringing. Probably you've heard this challenge already, right? Oh, cinema's gonna die, so on and so forth. But I'd like to know how it's not gonna die. Maybe. Yeah.
Okay. May I? Cinema is not dying.
No, of course I know, but I'd like to know how. Really,
it's just going to grow and progress into a different experience. By the way, even TV viewing at home has changed, and a lot of people start thinking it's dying because we're not switching on the TV anymore. Everybody's got their own personal device, but in actual fact, TV is going to come back, and it's going to come back differently, because what's going to happen is that technically, if you've noticed, screens are going to be disappearing, so we're not going to be all looking at one thing. We're going to look at a space. with that, technology is advancing to include us all in that space. Now, whether we like it or not, we might appear as avatars, right? And these avatars are only going to progress in how they reflect us. But I'm going to see, you and me are going to see each other inside a film, if I'm going to describe it to you into the future. So if I go to the movies today, what do? I pick up my popcorn, I pick up my soda, I walk into the theater and I sit down. I might be talking a bit with someone, but then all I'm doing is I'm sitting like this, right? And I'm watching this way. That is what we do in a cinema. So yes, it's collective because we're all sitting in the same room, but we're not collectively really experiencing the film and engaging with ourselves. Actually, it's going to become even more collective. The only challenge is that the technology has to get there. But that's how we see this progressing. So cinema is not going to die, but we're going to be more part of it rather than separated from it to just enjoy it as it's given to us. We are going to impact it, which is pretty nice. It's like what social media.
Taking it off from there, speaking of avatars and stuff, I think Patrick has been in this since the Second Life stage, and now I think Linden Labs has come up with Sensar, right? The new much more high fidelity.
There's about
thing?
3 or 4, fully embodied, virtual reality, social spaces. Sure.
So if you're watching a movie, let's say in a social platform like Sensar or Second Life right now today, how does that bring us together as a collective? Is that, I mean, what's different from, let's say, walking into a cinema?
Well, actually, I think this brings forth a really good question because of the fact that we're still thinking of the cinematic metaphor. So what's going on here is the idea of does this bring together people from being in a virtual space, watching what is ostensibly a cinematic space. Interestingly, there was in Altspace VR, there was the first room scale art and cinema festival last year. That was Microsoft.
Sorry, what is Altspace again?
And it's Microsoft's social space. And there's a VR chat, and Altspace is Microsoft's first chat. There was a young woman out of the United States, Yunji Johanning, who organized this piece. And there were actually a number of installations that were basically, I'd say, world-scale cinema, 360-degree cinema. In other words, you could walk in, and it was completely around you, not just as in a much more embodied sense than just a headspace, just a headspace.
Your
Your avatar was in there. And the thing is that I just kind of want to jump to the side just for a second, not too much, is saying that I think about this technology in regards to how artists of the past, who were very involved in technology, like Experiments in Art and Technology and the Fluxus movement, who were very interested in technology, seeing what the remaining people from that movement would be interested in doing now, and then seeing how that goes forward. The other thing that I'm very interested in, I've been working with, I work with Iranian, Kazakh, and Kyrgyz artists, who, and in the idea of maybe possibly how we could, decolonialize these spaces, which are typically, just very Western, and seeing how we could create, all of these different sort of spaces. And not myself, I'm not necessarily so interested in myself being on there. I just want to see, like, how can I get out of the road and see how we can create these ulterior spaces that could be really, really, really incisive.
So spaces is something that, Mamali, it's like your life, your buzzword thing, right? Have you had any installations, for example, where you melded a virtual audience or a real audience in the virtual world, or a virtual audience coming into your, into your exhibit?
Yeah, as Nathalie said, I think for me, we had the same question about painting when installation and video art was very hype in 90s. Like everyone was asking, like, if painting gonna die or gonna survive. I think, I mean, we cannot talk about like 100 years after, but I guess in the near future, I guess just we're gonna influence each other. Like, I guess for someone makes film today, knowing about the, what's happening in new technology and all this, like VR, XR world, you cannot, I mean, I guess we all think about like, okay, these are the new advantage of like adding to what I'm doing. Like, for me, as you said, like, I never had the idea of like making a physical installation and then put another completely different atmosphere with different lighting and like whole different series of things in virtual in the same installation, like 5 years ago. But no, I saw, okay, that makes like a bigger challenge as a director, as a creative in my mind. And I think this is, as I said, I'm very excited to be part of the first generation of doing this because, yeah.
Interesting. All right, I think we're running out of time. Do we have time for one last question, maybe? Just one, Ahmed, please. Okay, we got time. Oh, there's two there.
Hi, Mehdi here from Mutech. So definitely technology has been exciting everyone to what can possibly happen in future of movie and visual, audiovisual. We at Mutech, we do a lot of joystick dome immersive, screening, and we love the feeling that 50, 60, 100 people experience this as close to VR as possible you can get together. So you have that movie, cinematic experience. But do you think there will be or there should be a fine line between the storytelling, that you sit and watch something, and the interactive part of the technology that's been adding up to the game, There should be that, or there will be one, is gonna be the specification of the genre of, you just sit and watch a film, You just wanna listen and see the story someone's telling. Or like the Netflix thing that you be interacting, or VR. Do you think, is it gonna be where we're going, or there should be such a thing, because everybody is worried about movies dying and technology is taking over? Maybe people still like to watch and have their popcorn and, just see something.
All right, so I think this is a great question to round off the whole topic. And in a couple of sentences, what's your thoughts on it? Final thoughts on where we're heading with this whole thing?
Honestly, I think that we're just going to be faced with more choices really than any mandates in terms of how we experience story. I think that some people will always want a linear story that they can, switch on and watch, and that will always remain available. But there will be that extra level of immersive sort of experiences or interactive ones that would allow you to travel somewhere else or experience something different. I don't think it is an or situation, or this or that. I think it's an and or situation. I think this is how it's going to be. At the end of the day, the main art is storytelling, really. And it has changed over time and over thousands of years, but it's never changed in the sense of engaging a human brain to learn or to enjoy something or to see something differently. And I don't think the technology won't change that. It will be your human freedom choice to decide what you want to do to get that story. It's just giving you more options now. That's my opinion on it.
All right, Patrick, you want to say something in ending?
I think that for me, I think that there are two elements to this. Is that one of my favorite pieces that I've seen recently is a HoloLens piece by Mel Chin. He did a piece that basically talked about global warming by having boats going over Times Square and I think a large kind of like skeletal boat hull. And the thing is that you would have this, and also dealing with the singer Jenny Lind. And the thing is that this was a space that anybody could be sharing with anybody else in the space. And then the thing is, I also think about artists like Will Pappenheimer, who did something called skywriting. And the thing is with this, is that this is using AR in a way that's persistent. So in other words, what's happening here is that you have the artist or the cinematographer that puts forth their vision. But then the thing is the ability for people to have immersive, immediate, persistent experiences that they can share with other people in these spaces, that you can see what people said or did before. And then the thing is that this then merges with the author's vision. And I think this is really, really important and exciting, because to me what this is that I think this is about content providers touching their audience and the audience being able to touch one another.
Right, let's end with your thoughts, Mamali.
Yeah, I think we are really in the earliest stage of this new medium. And for me, I guess the answer is like, if we passed the limit and all the inconvenience of the needs VR and new technology, and we are like in the future we can, let's say, see Shining by Kubrick with the same quality in 360. I guess I prefer to see it in 360 than just having in the screen and eating pop. You know, I mean, like, we don't have, I can say as an artist, I didn't see a masterpiece in the new medium like what we had in cinema. But I guess in the future it might happen. And yeah.
All right, thank you, my esteemed panelists. I'd love a round of applause for all of them.